The grocery store was unusually crowded that evening. The hum of hurried conversations, the clatter of shopping carts, and the constant beeping of checkout scanners filled the air. The aisles were packed with impatient shoppers eager to get home after a long day. Lena Carter kept her head down, maneuvering her cart carefully through the crowded store. She was exhausted. Between juggling her shift at the diner and picking up her 5-year-old son, Ethan, from daycare, she had little energy left for the simple act of grocery shopping. Every trip was an exercise in careful budgeting, ensuring she could provide for her son without exceeding her tight finances. Ethan sat in the front of the cart, swinging his legs, his tiny fingers tracing shapes on the metal frame. He didn't fully understand why his mom always double-checked the prices, comparing them to the crumpled list in her hand. To him, it was just part of their routine. But for Lena, every cent mattered. Every purchase was deliberate. Every coupon, a lifeline. She approached the checkout, letting out a slow breath. She had spent the past few days clipping and organizing her coupons, ensuring she could stretch her dollars as far as possible. As she handed them over, she could feel the growing line behind her. The beep of the scanner punctuated the tense silence, each item a reminder of her careful calculations. Then a sharp voice cut through the air. "Seriously? You're holding up the entire store with your penny pinching." Lena stiffened. She turned slightly, her cheeks burning as she saw the source of the complaint. A tall man in an expensive charcoal gray suit stood behind her, arms crossed, impatience written all over his face. His designer watch gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and his smirk carried a level of condescension that made Lena's stomach twist. "Maybe try shopping within your means," he added, shaking his head as if she were some kind of inconvenience. Lena's mouth went dry. She opened her lips to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Her heart pounded in her chest. Confrontation was not something she was used to, especially not in front of her son. Ethan, sensing her discomfort, clutched at her sleeve with wide, worried eyes. The cashier hesitated, glancing between them and the growing tension in the air. The other shoppers remained quiet, watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Then a deep, steady voice rang out. "She's doing fine. You, on the other hand, could use some patience." The businessman stiffened. The smug expression on his face faltered slightly. Lena turned to see who had spoken, and nearly gasped. Keanu Reeves. He stood just a few feet away in line, dressed simply in dark jeans, a black t-shirt, and a worn leather jacket. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his sharp yet kind eyes locked onto the businessman with quiet authority. The businessman scoffed. "Oh, great! Hollywood stepping in to save the day." Keanu tilted his head slightly, a small smile tugging at his lips, but there was an unmistakable steel behind it. Or maybe just a guy who believes in decency. The businessman faltered under Keanu's steady gaze. The tension in the air thickened for a moment, but he ultimately huffed and looked away, suddenly very interested in his phone. Keanu turned to Lena, his expression softening. "Why don't we make this easier?" He reached into his wallet and pulled out his card. "I'll cover it." Lena's breath hitched. No, you don't have to do that," she said quickly, shaking her head. "We'll be okay." "I know," Keanu said gently, "but sometimes a little kindness goes a long way." The cashier, looking both stunned and relieved, quickly finished scanning the rest of the groceries. Keanu paid without hesitation, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Lena swallowed hard, emotion tightening her throat. She wasn't just grateful for the financial help, though it certainly meant a great deal, but for the kindness itself, for the reminder that not everyone looked down on her struggles. Ethan, still holding on to his mother's sleeve, finally spoke up, his small voice filled with awe. "You're like a real-life superhero." Keanu chuckled, crouching slightly to meet Ethan's gaze. "Nah, just a guy who respects hard work." Lena wiped at her eyes, exhaling a small laugh. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with sincerity. "Really?" Keanu gave a small nod, as if to say, no thanks were necessary. As Lena picked up her bags and walked out of the store, her son's tiny hand gripping hers, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: relief, and maybe, just maybe, a renewed faith in humanity.